According to the key, the total float of each activity is located in the bottom center of each activity. This was calculated during the backward pass through the schedule. The total float is calculated by subtracting the early finish from the late finish, or the early start from the late start. We know that there are 5 open months after activity H, and that the activity can be delayed for up to 5 months without delaying the overall project. So activity H has 5 months of total float. Now let's figure out the free float for activity H. Free float is how long you can delay an activity without delaying the next scheduled activity on the path. How long can we delay activity H without delaying the next scheduled activity in the path, which is activity E? Take a moment to answer this. You may pause the video at any time to determine the answer, and then resume the video when you're ready to hear the correct answer. If you said that activity H can be delayed 5 months without delaying activity E, you are correct. What does this mean? It means that activity H has 5 months of free float. So activity H has both total float and free float. This could be very useful to a project manager searching for flexibility in the schedule. Now take a moment and evaluate activity G on path 1. Does it have any free float? Remember, free float is the amount of time that activity G can be delayed without delaying the next scheduled activity on the path, which is activity H. If you need a hint, compare the early finish and late finish of activity G to the early start and late start of activity H. Is there any gap between them? So based on this information, how much free float does activity G have? Feel free to pause the video at any time and resume when you're ready. If you said that activity G has 0 free float, you are correct. We know that activity G can be delayed only if activity H is also delayed. They can use the total float available on path 1, but if activity H can't be delayed, neither can activity G, which is a pretty good indicator that activity G has no free float. Now take a moment and evaluate activity J on path 2 to determine if it has free float. If you'd like more time to think about your answer, just pause the video and resume when you're ready. If you said that activity J has 2 months of free float, you are correct. Good job! What about activity I? Does it have any free float? Pause the video if you'd like more time, and then resume. If you said that activity I has 0 free float, you are correct. Good work! Here are a few more tips that will help you when answering questions about float. The total float along a path is equal to the sum of the free floats of all activities on that path. There is no total float along the critical path, and since there is no total float, none of the critical path activities will have free float either. Now that you have calculated the free float, let's consider a scenario where you can use it. Let's say that your project has been spending at a faster pace than planned. Activities H, J, and C are using a lot of resources, and you would really like to slow the pace of spending until your cash flow improves at the beginning of next quarter. Now that you have determined the free float, you may consider reducing some of your resources allotted to activities H and J. This technique, called resource leveling, will cause the activities to take longer, but it will resolve your budget issue. So now you know how to calculate free float and how to use it when faced with a constraint such as a shortage of funding.